Look, artificial intelligence, it's everywhere, isn't it? It's recommending songs you vaguely remember. It's telling you which celebrity your cat most resembles. It's probably listening to us right now, plotting how to replace us with more efficient, less whiny versions of ourselves, which, to be fair, might not be the worst idea for some people. Think about it. No more arguments about whose turn it is to take out the bins, just silent, robotic efficiency. A truly terrifying yet strangely appealing prospect. It's like that slightly too keen intern, desperate to please, but you're never quite sure if they're going to revolutionize the office or accidentally set fire to the photocopier. The truth is, AI is creeping into our lives like a very polite, very intelligent mold. You barely notice it at first. Then one day you realize it knows your coffee order better than your own mother. It's finishing your sentences, suggesting your next holiday, and even trying to write your emails. And you let it. Because, let's be honest, writing emails is a soul-crushing endeavor. So I thought, why not take it a step further? Why not give AI the keys to the kingdom, or in this case, the keys to my incredibly mundane life for one entire day? What could possibly go wrong? Spoiler alert, quite a bit actually. My grand experiment, my foray into the digital unknown, was born out of a mixture of genuine curiosity and, let's be frank, a desperate need for content. In a world where we willingly hand over our data for a slightly better pizza recommendation, what happens when you outsource your actual decision-making? Do you unlock a new level of productivity and zen-like calm? Or do you end up wearing a clown suit to a funeral because an algorithm thought it would introduce levity? These were the important questions I, your humble guinea pig, set out to answer. This wasn't just about asking Siri for the weather. Oh no, this was about full-blown, no-holds-barred, AI-driven decision-making. From what I ate for breakfast to what I watched on television before bed. Every choice, big or small, was to be put into the digital hands of the Decider 3000, a name I gave to the collection of AI tools I cobbled together. Would it be a glimpse into a utopian future or a stark warning about letting computers get too big for their digital boots? Let's find out, shall we? Because if my day was going to be a chaotic mess, you, dear reader, were coming along for the ride. Now, you can't just unleash an AI on your life without some ground rules. That would be like giving a toddler a chainsaw and hoping for the best. Fun, perhaps, for a very specific type of person, but generally not advisable. So I laid down the law for my digital overlord. Rule number 1. The AI must make every decision where a choice is presented. No cheating. No, oh, but I really want that donut, not the sensible oat bran. The AI's word was final, like a very pedantic, very logical judge. Rule number 2 involved the tools. I wasn't using some super advanced sentient Skynet-level AI, mostly because those are expensive and frankly terrifying. Instead, I used a combination of readily available AI apps, a random choice generator for simple things, a sophisticated language model for more complex questions about what to do or say, and a diet app's AI for meal planning, which I already suspected was secretly trying to make me miserable. It was a digital Frankenstein's monster of decision-making stitched together with hope and Wi-Fi. Rule number 3 was about input. I had to phrase my requests clearly, no vague nonsense. If I asked, what should I do now? I had to be prepared for an answer like, calculate the optimal trajectory for a paper aeroplane. Specificity was key. I also decided that for subjective things like what should I wear, I'd give it options and it would pick. This felt slightly less like surrendering my entire identity and more like having a very opinionated, very binary stylist. A stylist who might, for all I knew, dress me like a character from a forgotten 80s sci-fi movie. And finally, rule number 4, document everything. The good, the bad, and the utterly bizarre. Because if you're going to subject yourself to potential AI-induced humiliation, you might as well get a good story out of it. This meant taking notes, photos, and possibly even therapy session transcripts. The goal was to see if this digital puppet master could genuinely enhance my day, or if it would simply tie me in frustrating, illogical knots. I was ready, or at least I thought I was. The AI, presumably, was always ready, humming away in the cloud, patiently waiting to ruin or revolutionize my Tuesday. The day began, as most days do, with the crushing realization that I was, in fact, awake. My first AI challenge breakfast, I presented the Decider 3000 via my meal planning app's AI feature with a simple question: what should I eat for breakfast? Its response was swift and, frankly, a bit uninspired. A single hard-boiled egg and a glass of unsweetened green tea. Now, I like eggs. I can tolerate green tea. But this felt less like a breakfast and more like a punishment. For a crime I didn't remember committing, my taste buds wept silently, undeterred or perhaps just too tired to argue with a disembodied algorithm. I complied. The egg was an egg. The tea was green. So far, so blandly efficient. Next up, my outfit for the day. I laid out 3 options: sensible office attire, casual comfort, and something a bit more adventurous involving a brightly coloured shirt I'd bought on a whim and never dared to wear. I asked my random choice AI which outfit. It chose, with digital certainty, the brightly coloured adventurous shirt, paired with sensible work trousers. It was a look that screamed, my top half is going to a party, but my bottom half has a spreadsheet to finish. Then came the commute. Usually, I drive, listening to a podcast. I asked the AI, how should I get to work? It analysed traffic data, public transport schedules, and probably my dwindling will to live, then suggested I take the bus. The bus. I hadn't taken the bus in years. It also suggested a new podcast, something about the history of obscure gardening tools. Riveting stuff, clearly. So, armed with my slightly schizophrenic outfit and a podcast about hose, the garden kind hopefully, I ventured out into the world, a soldier marching to the beat of an algorithmic drum. The bus journey was an experience. It was crowded. It smelled faintly of damp dog. And the podcast on 18th century trowel design was surprisingly not as dull as I'd feared, or maybe my brain was just numb from the green tea. Either way, the AI had successfully navigated my morning routine, albeit in a way that made me feel like a character in a slightly off-kilter indie film. Breakfast was Spartan, my outfit was questionable, and my commute was retro. So far, AI was less genius and more mildly eccentric and health-conscious. The day was young. Arriving at work, looking like a confused parrot, I faced my next big AI hurdle, my actual job. I fed my to-do list into a task management AI, asking it to prioritize my day. Usually, I start with the easiest tasks to build momentum, a classic procrastination technique I've perfected over years. The AI, however, had other ideas. It immediately highlighted the most complex, brain-draining report as priority number 1. Thanks, Hal. Just what I needed after a breakfast designed for an ascetic monk. I grumbled, but rules are rules. I dove into the report, and here's where things got interesting. The AI, bless its digital heart, also offered to help structure the report. It suggested section headings, key points to cover, and even offered some boilerplate text for the introduction. Now, I didn't use it verbatim because that would be cheating, and probably result in a report that sounded like it was written by a very articulate robot, but its suggestions were actually quite good. They helped me break down the task and get started, which is often the hardest part. The AI also managed to my time. It set Pomodoro timers, 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes of break. During one break, I asked it, what should I do for my 5-minute break? It suggested, stand up and do 10 jumping jacks in the middle of the open plan office. I did consider it purely for the comedic value, but then I imagined the HR meeting that would inevitably follow. Instead, I opted for a discreet walk to the water cooler, feeling like a rebellious teenager skipping digital PE class. The AI was a harsh but strangely effective taskmaster. By lunchtime, I'd made significant progress on the dreaded report. More progress, if I'm honest, than I usually would have by that point. The AI's ruthless prioritization and structured approach, while initially annoying, had forced me to be more focused. It was like having a very persistent, very logical manager who didn't care about my feelings, only about results. Which, in a corporate environment, is probably the ideal manager, if we're being brutally honest. Perhaps this AI takeover wasn't pure chaos after all. Maybe there was a spark of genius hidden in its cold, hard code. Section 5, Lunchtime Lottery, when an algorithm picks your sandwich lunchtime. The moment my stomach had been eagerly anticipating, especially after its earlier rendezvous with a solitary egg, I turned to my culinary AI, the one that had already demonstrated a clear preference for austerity. I asked, what should I have for lunch? Give me 3 options and I'll pick one from a local cafe menu. The AI, after a moment of what I imagined to be intense, algorithmic deliberation over calories and nutritional balance, presented its choices. A quinoa salad with kale, a lentil soup, or a chicken breast sandwich on whole wheat. No mayonnaise. My soul sighed. It was like a menu designed by someone who actively disliked joy. I dutifully went to the local cafe, menu in hand. The quinoa salad looked like something you'd feed a rabbit with high cholesterol. The lentil soup, while probably healthy, felt a bit too earnest for my mood. That left the chicken sandwich. One chicken breast sandwich on whole wheat, no mayo please, I said to the server, who looked at me with a mixture of pity and confusion. It was the kind of order that screams, I've given up on happiness, but at least my arteries are clear. I felt a deep spiritual connection to that server in that moment. Eating the sandwich was an exercise in quiet contemplation. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't exciting. It was the edible equivalent of beige. As I munched, I wondered if the AI was subtly trying to tell me something about my life choices. Or maybe it just really, really hated mayonnaise. While the AI's breakfast and lunch choices were undeniably healthy, they were also stripping away the small, delicious joys of spontaneous food decisions, the joy of a cheeky pastry, the delight of an unexpectedly good burger. The AI was optimizing for health, but perhaps at the cost of a little bit of soul. Still, I had to admit, I didn't feel that post-lunch slump that usually follows a more indulgent meal. I felt surprisingly alert. Was this the AI's genius at play? Forcing me into a healthier lifestyle, one joyless sandwich at a time, or was it slowly turning me into a highly efficient, kale-consuming automaton? The jury was still out. But one thing was for sure, my taste buds were staging a silent protest, dreaming of a world filled with cheese, carbs, and glorious, glorious mayonnaise. The afternoon awaited, and I was slightly afraid of what the AI had in store for my free time. Section 6. An afternoon of algorithmic adventures and awkwardness. With work mostly conquered, thanks to my digital drill sergeant, I faced the afternoon. I had a couple of hours free before I needed to head home. AI, I typed into my language model, suggest an interesting and enriching activity for me to do this afternoon in my local area. I braced myself. Would it suggest bird watching, visiting a museum of thimbles, or perhaps learning ancient Greek? Its response was unexpected. Visit the local community garden and offer to help with weeding for an hour. Well, now, that was wholesome and involved actual physical effort, so off I went, still in my slightly bizarre party shirt meets office trousers combo, to the community garden. It was a lovely little oasis of green in the middle of the city. I found a friendly volunteer, explained my AI-driven quest, which earned me a very strange look, understandably, and was promptly handed a pair of gloves and pointed towards a patch of very enthusiastic dandelions. For the next hour I pulled weeds. It was surprisingly therapeutic. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, I was communing with nature, all thanks to a piece of software. Who knew AI had a green thumb? After my horticultural endeavours, I asked the AI what I should do next. Engage in a creative pursuit. Try writing a short poem about your experience in the garden. A poem? Me? My poetic talents usually extend to limericks about my pets. But a rule is a rule. I sat on a park bench feeling slightly self-conscious and attempted to channel my inner Wordsworth. The result was not exactly Keats. Green weeds I pulled with digital command, a sunny patch in this fair land. It wasn't going to win any awards, but it was an activity. The AI was certainly pushing me out of my comfort zone. The final AI suggestion for the afternoon before heading home was practice active listening with a stranger. Now this was where I started to feel a bit like I was in a social experiment reality show. How does one just practice active listening with a stranger without coming across as incredibly weird? The AI, when pressed for specifics, suggested, find someone who looks like they might want to talk and ask them about their day, focusing on understanding their perspective. I looked around, everyone seemed very busy, not wanting to talk to a strange man in a bright shirt who'd just been writing bad poetry about weeds. I decided to creatively reinterpret this. I called my mum, she always wants to talk, and I actively listened. Points for trying AI. Section 7. Socializing by software. My AI wingman. Spoiler, it crashed. The evening approached, and with it, the potential for AI-orchestrated social interaction. My friend Dave was supposed to call. I asked the AI, Dave is calling later. Suggest 3 interesting conversation starters that are not about the weather or work. The AI, in its infinite wisdom, offered 1. If you could have any superpower, what would it be, and how would you use it to improve public transportation? 2. What is your opinion on the socio-economic impact of competitive cheese rolling? 3. Describe your perfect breakfast food. And and defend its superiority. These were certainly not about the weather. They were, however, profoundly odd. When Dave called, I steeled myself. "Dave!" I began, trying to sound casual. "If you could have any superpower, what would it be? And how would you use it to improve public transportation?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Are you okay?" Dave asked, genuine concern in his voice. I quickly backtracked, blaming a weird article I'd read. I didn't dare try the cheese-rolling question. The AI, as a conversationalist, was perhaps a little too left field. It was like having a wingman who thought the best way to impress someone was by discussing the mating habits of the Patagonian toothfish. Next, I had a family group chat that was usually quite active in the evenings. I asked the AI to draft a fun and engaging message to send. It produced, "Greetings, familial unit. I trust your diurnal activities have been satisfactory. May I inquire as to the current status of your respective objectives?" I read it. I read it again. It sounded like a Borg drone trying to make small talk. I couldn't do it. This was a bridge too far. I sent a generic "hope everyone's having a good evening" message instead. Some things, it seems, are best left to human intuition, however flawed. My attempt to use AI to plan a hypothetical weekend activity with friends also went sideways. I asked it to suggest a fun group activity that caters to diverse interests. It suggested a collaborative session to write a new constitution for a fictional micronation. While undeniably creative, I had a sneaking suspicion my friends would rather just go to the pub. The AI's attempts at social engineering were proving to be more chaotic than genius. It understood logic and data, but the subtle, messy art of human connection, not so much. It was like trying to get a calculator to understand sarcasm. Section 8. Evening entertainment curated by code endured by me. As the day wound down, it was time for the AI to choose my evening entertainment. I was tired. My brain felt like it had been through a spin cycle of unusual requests and slightly forced interactions. I asked my friendly neighborhood AI suggest a relaxing movie for me to watch tonight. I was hoping for a comforting comedy, maybe an action flick with lots of explosions and minimal plot, something easy. The AI, however, had grander ambitions for my cultural enrichment. It recommended a 3-hour black-and-white Swedish art house film about existential angst. Of course it did. I found the film on a streaming service. It was long, very long. There were many lingering shots of bleak landscapes. Characters spoke in hushed, mournful tones about the futility of existence. It was the cinematic equivalent of the AI's breakfast choice, technically proficient, probably good for my soul in some abstract way, but not exactly a barrel of laughs. I kept waiting for a car chase or a witty one-liner, but all I got was more beautifully framed despair. My cat, who had joined me on the sofa, seemed equally unimpressed and fell asleep within 20 minutes. Wise creature. For dinner, the AI, via my meal app, had decreed baked salmon with steamed asparagus and a side of quinoa. Again, quinoa. This AI was obsessed. It was healthier than my usual Tuesday night pizza, I'll grant it that, but as I ate my impeccably balanced, slightly joyless meal while watching Ingmar Bergman ponder the abyss, I felt a strange sense of detachment. This wasn't my evening. It was an evening curated by an algorithm designed for optimal health and intellectual stimulation, perhaps, but it lacked the messy, imperfect human touch. It lacked me. Before bed, I asked the AI one last question. What time should I go to bed for optimal rest? It calculated it word, it probably cross-referenced my sleep data with lunar cycles and the migratory patterns of geese. 10:17 p.m, it declared. Such precision. Not 10:15, not 10:20, but 10:17 p.m. I didn't even know how to set an alarm for 10:17. As I lay in bed waiting for the precise moment of AI-approved slumber, I reflected on the day. It had been a journey, a weird, often frustrating, occasionally enlightening journey into the heart of artificial intelligence. Section 9, the final bite, chaos, genius, or just a very confused machine. So, after a full day of living life by algorithm, what's the verdict? Was it chaos? Was it genius? Or was it something else entirely? Well, it was certainly an experience. There were moments of surprising efficiency. That work report, I genuinely think the AI helped me tackle it more effectively. My diet for the day, while bland, was undeniably healthy. I probably consume more vegetables and less refined sugar than I have in months. So points to the AI for being a surprisingly effective if somewhat tyrannical, health and productivity coach. It was like having a very strict, very logical personal assistant who genuinely wanted me to be better, even if its methods were a bit robotic. Then there was the chaos. The outfit, the outfit. The AI's fashion sense was, shall we say, avant-garde in a way that mostly just invited confused stares. Its attempts at social interaction were hilariously awkward, like watching a brilliant scientist try to explain quantum physics to a toddler using only interpretive dance. The Swedish existential despair movie was not, I repeat, not my idea of relaxing evening entertainment. These moments highlighted the AI's limitations, its inability to grasp nuance, humor, or the wonderfully illogical nature of human desire. It could process data, but it couldn't quite process life. Ultimately, the day felt like being a character in a video game where someone else was holding the controller, and that someone else was a very intelligent, very literal-minded computer. It was fascinating to see how an AI would interpret and act upon my requests. It pushed me out of my comfort zone, made me try new things, weeding, poetry, and forced me to confront my own habits and routines. There's definitely potential for AI to be a useful tool in everyday life, for optimizing certain tasks, for offering new perspectives, but as a full-time life manager, I'm not so sure. It lacked warmth, spontaneity, and the ability to understand that sometimes you just really, really need that donut. So, genius or chaos? I think it's a bit of both. The genius lies in its potential to help, to streamline, to offer data-driven insights. The chaos comes when we expect it to be human, to understand the messy, beautiful, irrational parts of our lives. For now, I'm happy to take back the reins. I'll use AI as a co-pilot, perhaps, but not as the sole captain of my ship. And tomorrow I'm having pizza for breakfast, and the AI can just deal with it because some decisions are too important to be left to a machine, however smart it might be.